Gentlemen, good morning. VMware Explore 2023, same guys, same topic, new session. So we're again talking about Cloud Director design, do's and don'ts, and maybe we share one or two fun stories around the whole thing. So the agenda with us, we do a brief introduction of ours, then we dig into the topic, and maybe a wrap up. We'll see. So I start with myself. My name is Matthias, partner at Com Division, mainly focused on the Cloud Director stack, so the Cloud Stack, VCD, NSX, and VRO, so the whole automation around the whole Cloud Director stack.
Yeah, thanks, Matthias. My name is Toby. As Matthias already mentioned, focusing on the whole cloud stack, primarily the whole NSX and cloud networking story. Also partner at Com Division. So let's do it quick and easy. Who are we? Who we are? Com Division was founded in the 90s. Our main focus nowadays is clearly on the whole VMware portion. So we are focusing on the whole VMware products, but also nowadays truly being a multi-cloud partner, so focusing on VMC, on AWS, Google, and stuff like this. What are our three main business areas? Architecting a solution, operating the solution, and support the operational teams. And since most of us are also VCIs, we are also a strong relationship to the whole education.
All right, that was a brief introduction. We start with the same sentence every single year. The worst idea is having no design at all. Even a bad design is better than having none. Today we're going to cover building blocks versus sites, because we think it's interesting and funny. We cover standardization, allocation models, again, yes. IP spaces, because it's new and fancy. And last but not least, today, that's the big surprise, we're talking business. Oh boy. So we talk about build consumable products. Why? Because we saw that many CSPs are struggling with that in the last year. That's why we start talking business, but just a little bit. What to consider, what to ignore. First of all, infrastructure. Why infrastructure? Because it's underlying the building blocks. So we still have vSphere. We need to consider cluster size, amount of clusters. Should we use a distributed switch? Yes or no? We're still struggling on that one. And which storage are we going to use? Traditional storage, like shared centralized storages, independent of the protocol, or are we going to leverage vSAN? What is still the biggest concern about vSAN? Cost. Because VMware is still not able to provide a proper cost model for CSPs around the whole vSAN. Let's dig into it. Building blocks versus sites. What is a building block? It is one consistent or one repeatable piece of infrastructure which I can use over and over and over, identically. So it might consist of a vCenter. That's one of the questions in the design. Start asking yourself, what are the components of a building block? Am I doing vCenter per block? Yes or no? We always have to have ESXi hosts, otherwise it's not working. Are we going to have one NSX manager per building blocks? What's our considerations around that?
Yeah, what would you like to achieve? Is it fine to have NSX stretched across your provider VDCs? Or do you say, hey, no, each building block should be this dedicated solution, this dedicated provider VDC, and I don't need to stretch my workload across multiple provider VDCs. Now, with the latest release of VCD, we have now finally got the support for federation, but also then we need to consider, are we ready to go with federation? Is it really needed to go with federation? So if we're talking about a single site solution, do we really need to have federation, or do we say, hey, I have a single site, but I utilize my multiple building blocks, so it's fine to go with one single NSX instance, for example.
And last but not least, storage. So what are the considerations you need to think about before creating a building block? Cluster sizes, limits. Please always keep the limits in mind. Virtual machines per vCenter, for example. A few of you might think like limits. So vSphere can handle that many objects, limits doesn't apply anymore. Guys, that's wrong. We had a fun story this spring, having one customer asking, what shall we do? Because we currently have 64 instances of VCD with approximately 800,000 virtual machines, and we struggle to manage. So it happens sometimes. So once we have created our building blocks, the next part are sites. A site consists of one or more building blocks. And that makes the whole design consistent and repeatable. You can build over and over and over. So these are considerations. Dedicated NSX managers, one vCenter, many vCenter. Shall we use enhanced linked mode between the vCenters? So take all those questions into account before putting VCD on top of it and start creating PVDCs. And always keep one thing in mind with NSX managers. Please connect NSX to VCD before you connect the vCenter. That's a typically approach I'm using, because if you create a PVDC and you forget to add NSXT to it, it's a one-way ticket to hell. It's still not possible to attach NSX to a PVDC if it's not later on. It's still not possible. So these are all considerations we need to cover. As Toby mentioned, network stretching, our networks per site. Which services are we going to offer to our customers? Do we have active-active, or are we providing DR services? So it's active. It's still active-active, but we don't have productive workloads running on both sides active at the same time. Network stretching is a complete different beast. Have you ever thought about GSLB?
Yeah, for example. So what can I get with GSLB? Global server load balancing. So I can achieve that I have multiple VMs running in different provider VDCs, different OVDCs, for example, and can have up in front my global server load balancer. Since we get more and more the support from NSX ALB into VCD, this is one of the next features which is clearly on the roadmap, so it will be there in the next couple of months. Yeah, dear Mr. Customer, you would like to have a multi-site solution? I can offer it now to you now.
What we saw in designs, so proper building blocks, proper solution design, talking, disaster recovery, active site, standby site, failover, tested, everything is working perfectly fine. But there was still one thing missing. If you have two sites, who's failing over the public IP addresses? So also keep the supporting layer on top in mind, because if you can fail over the services but you cannot access them from the outside anymore, it's a useless solution. It's completely useless. So keep that in mind. So that's why GSLB might be one very interesting option to include in the design. The most important part of the design is discuss the available solutions or the choices we have with the customer. Otherwise, he might not be aware what's part of the design. But still, where's Cloud Director? So if we talk sites, we have maybe single site, multi-availability zones, but one site, or many sites, or multi-availability zones in multi-sites. The second important thing to consider is, where am I placing my VCD? We typically talk about instances. So one VCD instance consists of multiple cells, at least three, please, three. Always remember Monty Python, Knights of the Holy Grail, Holy Hand Grenade. It's always three at least. Have we one centralized cloud director managing all the sites? Or are we using one VCD per site? And the next step, please consider the implications we have. If we use multi-VCD instances for multiple sites, the implications, for example, are, as you mentioned, federation. So where is a customer logging in? How can I make the customer resources accessible to the customer? Is a single pane of glass? Or am I proactively using multi-instances to provide a different DR feeling, disaster recovery? So what are my goals behind the whole solution? And that relates to the building blocks as well. Where are the vCenters? So vCenters are out of the equation because we have so many anyway. But where are the NSX managers? And that's what you mentioned already. Are we going to provide stretched networking for customers? Enabling customers to transparently move workloads between data centers or sites? Or are we not enabling customers doing that? It's a very important decision to make, and that is, again, part of the design. Discuss it up front. Another option is providing different services within a data center from an availability perspective, so we can have A, B, and stretch state change. So keep that in mind. Which SLAs are you providing to the customers? It's, again, same story over and over and over. Which design choices do we have? Which business requirement is related? Make a decision, justify the decision, and live with it. What is that leading to? It's leading to standardization. So standardization helps us to achieve many important things. So we start with consistency. Why is consistency key for the infrastructure? If we have the same building blocks being used over and over and over, first consistent feeling is performance. Each building block behaves identical, except we build those for different performance tiers, maybe faster storage solutions or faster CPUs, right? The next is repeatability. So if we use a building block and standardize that, we can deploy one building block after the other over and over and over and extend the infrastructure. And of course, easier maintenance and operations. And last but not least, there is always an operations team who needs to run the whole infrastructure. We need to ease troubleshooting. If we have hosts from different vendors, different storage solutions all over the place, it's very hard to troubleshoot because each vendor has their very unique set of tools, commands, and of course, behavior. Allocation models. You want to start with allocation models? Oh no, everybody loves allocation models. I always say, choose wisely. What is the most important thing if we talk allocation models? Never ever mix within a single PVDC. So today, Toby and I, we're trying a different approach to talk about allocation models because we're all aware we have 4, but we're not digging into those 4 and how they are configured and their meanings. But what should we start off during the design phase of allocation models? What is the main difference between the models we have? We identify if we're going to configure the underlying vSphere infrastructure to do the resource management for CPU and memory either on a per virtual machine object, or on a per resource pool object, so a group of virtual machines. And the implication is, who's responsible of managing overcommitment? Is it the service provider or the tenant? And that's what you need to think about. Am I providing the ability to use overcommitment? And who is responsible of making the decision, am I overcommitting, yes or no? Overcommitment, performance might drop. And the vCPU speed, we love the vCPU speed because many just forget to design the vCPU speed and think about it. Most of the people forget to change the value, and 1 gigahertz is not really fast. So keep that in mind as well. IP spaces.
Yeah, new feature. Cool new feature. Yeah. We finally got the possibility to offering IP as a service. So this is what IP space is mainly for. There are two options available, the public IP space and the private IP space. So what is the main difference between those two? On the public IP space, is utilized that the service provider is managing it, and it gives us the ability that the tenant can consume public IP addresses. Automatically, he can request for IP addresses, he gets an IP address, and he can move on. And both directions or both spaces are there that you as a cloud service provider get your routing in a working manner, that you don't need to care about, hey, what's going on in my routing and how do I solve my routing issues, that this is be solved with IP spaces because the customer is only capable of consuming the IP addresses you give him in the IP space portion. What's the main difference between public and private? Public is working from an NSX perspective on the uplink interface from tier 1 to the tier 0 gateway. The private is utilized for downlink, or not really downlink, for the internal use in the consumers, in the customer space, for doing routed networks, whatever he would like to utilize. So this is the main difference between the private IP spaces and the public IP spaces. And last but not least, we now get the capability with the release of VCD 10.5 that we can migrate our legacy IP allocations to IP spaces. And this is also part of the whole NSX V2T migration tool now with the latest releases.
And that all leads us to the same story in the end. And please do not shoot the messenger, but I was talking the whole week business, right? That's very unlikely for me, but a few things happened prior to the conference, so I had to talk business the whole week. And that drove me to the idea, why not to talk business in a community tech session? Because we all need to drive or support the sales organization. I'm really sorry for that, right? No one has tomatoes or eggs or anything, right? So I'm perfectly fine up here. So build consumable products. Consumption is key nowadays. So more and more customers are asking their CSPs, could you please provide a service? What if a CSP is not able to provide that service instantly? Oh yeah, dear Mr. Customer, please allow me 2 or 3 weeks. I'll try to build it. So that's not a proper relationship because the customer knows exactly like, oh shit, oh beep, that was a beep. So he knows exactly they're trying to build it. They have no clue about it. That's not very trustworthy. So start digging into new technologies and start coming up with a product around it. I think the next main step is, sorry for that, Kubernetes as a service. Add, for example, CSE for one to your design. Be ready, be prepared to provide additional services. Get familiar with it. And as soon as you're familiar and you have a customer approaching you, oh, dear Mr. CSP, I'm interested because I have a new application and the vendor ships it as a containerized application. Could you please provide a platform enabling me to deploy the new application? And you can select, all right, no problem. Here's the contract. Consumption is key. I just change the permission. It's available in the UI, and the customer is able to provision new Kubernetes cluster in self-service and managing those clusters himself. So design products, firstly, enabling the sales rep to sell it easily. Do not start building rocket science out of it. And have new technology being ready to run if someone needs it. If you create new product packages, and if a feature is not available in the UI, please always consider the managed service approach. What is a managed service? It's just who's responsible of configuring a service. Is it either self-service, so it's the tenant, or if it's a managed service, it's the CSP who configures the stuff. You know what's cool about provider managed services? I tend to charge more for it. Yeah? I'm a bugger, I do that. So charge more, provide those services if they're not available in the UI. Again, it is the same process because then you can offer it. I know many customers tend to compare smaller CSPs with the hyperscalers. And we are all aware we cannot compete with them. We need to build our own products, build solutions around the products, maybe if your customers are asking for me. For a few services which might be available in self-service, still consider if you should provide those services in self-service because of support. We all, as mid-sized CSPs, that's what I refer to, so not hyperscaler, we take care of our customers. So if they burn and fail configuring something, we're still there to support our customers. And if you provide, I'm so sorry, questions are not allowed, but afterwards we are around and we can have a short discussion around that. Last year I was trying to answer questions in the session and Alice there just chased me down. Lucky me, he's not here currently. So think about the support team. We had the fun with a CSP and a customer, and they enabled the distributed firewall for the customers. They had hundreds of tickets because their customers didn't understand what microsegmentation does if you configure the any block safe. That's really nice. So always have that in mind. On the other hand, if you build a managed service, be aware of the consequences. What if you provide distributed firewall as a service? So service provider management has a ton of implications again. Because what if you fat finger a firewall rule and you just kill a customer's application? I know, there is no solution saying A or B is better. You can choose between pest and cholera, that's it. Okay. All right, so in the end, it's always about the money. Famous last words, just being on time. That's Yves, our CEO. He's supposed to stand next to me, but obviously,
looks a little bit different.
Yves got bold. So famous last words. Even if you build a really awesome technical solution, and if it's not related to any of your business requirements, it's useless. It just burns money. It makes the life of the operations team completely miserable because it's not manageable.
But it's still cool.
It's still cool, but it's not manageable. All right, gentlemen, thanks for your time. Enjoy the last day of VMware Explore 2023. It was great being on stage. Take care.
Take care, and we are around here.